Right. Fab. Right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Against All Odds. And as you know, because I always say it, I have inspirational guests on. So it's purely selfish for my reasons. So I get to speak to these people. And I'm really excited today to welcome Deb Barber from the Quality Assurance Network. How are you, my lovely?
I'm absolutely brilliant, which is what we're supposed to say after our last session. No, I'm really, really good. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
No problem. So this is your first podcast,
It
mate. So
is.
I feel honoured, absolutely honoured.
Virgin. Yes.
This is going to be great. So we had a call. I've known Deb for a while now, but we had a call about a month ago about what we're going to talk about. And the idea was to talk about how you work in a men's environment and how to deal with that. But the phone call went much deeper into like ADHD and all kinds of things. So it's a mixed episode today which is really inspiring. Yes.
It could go anywhere. Actually.
It could go anywhere. It's so exciting. I love these chats because it's just like me and you talking and nobody else is going to hear it. It's great.
I know.
So let's talk about the ADHD first, because obviously that is a huge part of your life.
It is.
And you were diagnosed in 2022, is that right?
Yeah. Back end of 2022. And medicated. So I was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, which wasn't a surprise to most people. It was a surprise to me. But as soon as I mentioned it to people, I was like, "That we knew that." Nobody said anything. But yes, back end of 2022 was when I was first diagnosed with it. And it's interesting because in women it kind of shows up a lot differently than it does in men and boys. And there's obviously that stereotype of the naughty boy with ADHD, and that was not what I was like. Even as a kid, that wasn't what I was like. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, one of which it has its challenges, but yeah, it's kind of good now. I'm embracing it, which is great.
Yeah, that's cool. So you was somebody else, it was a child of yours being diagnosed, wasn't it?
So it's my son. Yeah, my son was diagnosed when he was I think he was about 8 or 9, so a long time ago. It's his 18th birthday soon, so that's how long ago it was. And of course you have strategies when they're young, when they're in primary school, things like timeout cards and all that sort of stuff that they get, which is great. But when he then transitioned into he was going into sixth form, and of course you can't be using timeout cards and all that sort of stuff and pulling them from under tables in sixth form. I mean, you could, but so we started looking at kind of strategies for adults with ADHD, what that presents as. And I kind of sat there going, hang on a second, this describes my life. And up until that point, I'd been treated for anxiety over the years. And I know we're going to kind of delve into a little bit of that, but I've been treated for anxiety. I've been put on antidepressants and all sorts, despite me saying I'm not anxious. I couldn't find the word. I now know the word. The word is overwhelmed. And despite sort of saying all these things to GPs, it's anxiety. And then as soon as I heard all that stuff, I went down the route of, could it be ADHD? And it turned out it was. So
yeah, you hear so many people, don't you, that have been put on antidepressants and anti-anxiety tablets, and actually that's not the problem. But I suppose like the symptoms outwardly look similar, but there's so much more going on inside.
There absolutely is. I mean, there was one of the doctors that I saw suggested that it might be schizophrenia.
Oh my God, well, that's way off the mark, isn't it?
Hugely off the mark. Because I'd said, maybe I shouldn't have said it, but actually maybe, the medical profession needs a bit more understanding, which is a massive statement, I know, but just from experience, in that I was asked, what does this feel like on a daily basis? And I said, it's constant noise in my head, constant noise. It's things like, have I turned my hair straighteners off this morning? Bloody hell, I've got to go and walk the dogs. I've got to sort this out. I've got to go and do that for the school. I've got this work to do, that work to do. And it ends up getting so much going on. And I described it as a tumble dryer of stuff that you can't turn off. This tumble dryer, it's going round and round and round. It's getting faster and faster. And the doctor said, well, if you're hearing noises and voices in your head, then we have to look at sort of schizophrenia. And No, not unless, these voices aren't saying things to me, the bad thing. Unless these voices are saying, can you please put the washing on? You need to walk the dog.
Yeah.
Average.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
just the mark things are. It was bizarre. But yes, thankfully got sorted. It was a long process because you have to be assessed. And I know there's people out there that's diagnosing this in a half an hour Zoom call, and I know that happens. But for me, thankfully, that wasn't the case. It was a long process, and an accurate one, which is great. So yeah, got sorted.
Yeah. Was it, when you got that diagnosis, was it a relief?
I don't know if relief is the right word. It was more of a, well, maybe it is. It was more of a, God, thank God. It's not so much the label, but it was that there's now an understanding. And so because there's an understanding of what it is, I now know that there's strategies, and I now know that it can be not fixed, but certainly worked with. Yeah. And that was, that, I suppose relief is probably the right word, actually, because all of a sudden now there's a path forward, and I'm not going around in circles. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I know you'd struggled. We'll get onto that next. Long time before that.
It did.
So explain to people how you were coping, because obviously at this point, like back in, was it 2012 that there started to be a problem? Did you say?
Yes, generally, yeah. If we're going on to what I think we're going on to,
yes.
2012. I wouldn't, not necessarily a problem in 2012, but everything started in 2012, and what became a coping strategy and a little bit of fun, a few years later, became a full-on cocaine addiction, which I didn't realize until I'd gone through the ADHD process that actually I wasn't feeling the same using that stuff as most other people do. It was having a different effect, which completely ties in with calming the brain down and all that sort of stuff. So very much with what you do, actually. So
yeah. So how was you? Because I know you kind of had a few things go wrong in short time. Tell people about that.
Yeah, and I will try not to cry today. I did. I was obviously what I now know is sort of as self-medicating, I think, is a terminology. I was using a lot of coke, and that obviously didn't help. I thought I was high functioning at the time, and I really wasn't at all. But nonetheless, got to 2020, and obviously we had COVID and all that sort of stuff, and things going on there. But just at the start of 2020, I lost my dad, which was a big impact for me. Yeah, I was going to say I wasn't going to do it.
Let it out, mate. Let it out.
So there'd been a lot of issues prior to that with my childhood, so when I lost my dad, it was a lot of grief for that, and also for what could have been and wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, Amy, what did you do this to me
for? You know me, mate. I'll so cry the cortisol out, so keep crying.
I'm good. So there was that. And then after that happened, I didn't cope with that very well at all. Thought I was coping all right with it, and then of course we then had the old lockdown. Oh, they're coming, aren't they? Jesus Christ, look at this. Then we had the old lockdown. I have absolutely knackered lungs, so I ended up being one of the clinically extremely vulnerable people that was shielded.
So you were very isolated then, as well.
Very isolated. I was fortunate in a way. God, I'm still mopping my eyes up. Look. I was fortunate in a way in that I've got horses, and obviously dogs, and so I was allowed. Hate that when you look back now, it's madness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's surreal, isn't it?
Yeah, I was allowed to do things for the welfare of the animals. So the horses are down the road at stables that I rent. So I was allowed to go there to do the things with the horses and then come home and then obviously walk the dogs and all the stuff. So I did all that, but apart from that, I wasn't allowed to see anybody. I was getting the boxes delivered to the house that the government was sending out, which you had to disinfect your shopping. It's
just mad.
You had to disinfect your shopping and all that sort of stuff, and this almost apocalyptic kind of scenario on top of what had happened already. was just, the isolation. I'm a really social person, and the isolation didn't do me much good. And I'm not on my own in that. I know a lot of people that were like that. July came, I lost my dog, which again was another huge impact for me because he was everything. I'm not going to go. And then moving a bit further on from that, my best friend at the time decided she was going to end our friendship. There was a lot of stuff going on, and with hindsight, she had her reasons also. And I get that now, but at the time it was bang, bang, bang. Every time.
Yeah, a lot of life changes. Yeah.
Oh, huge, and it just felt that every time I was on the floor, I was getting kicked when I was there. And then it was September 2020, I think it was September, October. I don't remember the exact date because I spent 3 months afterwards just completely almost comatose with medication. But it was at that point in we'll say September, that I decided I was going to walk myself onto a train track and end it all. Obviously that didn't happen, otherwise I'd be a ghost sitting here talking to you.
A stranger was involved, wasn't he, saving you, that you don't know who he is.
Very strange scenario that is. Yeah. So a guy came over to see if I was all right, which clearly
you're standing on a train track, you're not all right.
I'm fine, mate, I'm just waiting for the train to Pancras. Don't worry about me. With hindsight, I clearly wasn't. But yeah, so he came over. He said he understood. Everything was going to be all right. He's going to get help. And then he disappeared. Not literally in a puff of smoke, because that would be strange. But again, my brain wasn't where it was supposed to be at the time. So all I remember is this guy, and I remember him clear as day, come in to talk to me, saying that everything was going to be all right. He said to me, and this is the funniest thing, he said to me, "Stay there, you'll be fine." And I remember that moment, I switched kind of out of the sort of crisis I was in. And again, it's one of those things where, you've known me a long time, I find humour in the most darkest situations.
Yes.
And I remember looking at him going, "But if I fucking stay here, I'm going to get squished by a train to some point. You're not really helping me." So anyway, so that was a bit of a moment. And and I ended up somehow back home with the mental health crisis team. And my husband, I don't believe in all this stuff, but I will say thank God. He went through hell for 3 months with me. But I remember him sort of, being very, very stressful with the crisis team, because initially it was, well, are you home? Are you safe? Well, you're right, then you don't need us. And he's like, I don't know what to do with this person that, the moment I turned my back, she could do anything. And he's obviously spoken to me about this afterwards. But I ended up being medicated on a lot of diazepam and something else. I can't remember what it was. It'll come to me. But there was 2 different lots of medication that completely wiped me out for 3 months. And again, if we go back to ADHD, during that time, I don't remember. I really don't remember a lot of it. But what I do know afterwards, I produced some of the best work I've ever done in my life during that 3 months. I found and created some amazing strategies in life. I found Paul Mort, that we both know very well. And it was as if that 3 months of being almost kind of having my brain shut down with the meds, almost kind of went, right, reset, calm down.
And
I ended up doing strategy, doing my best work. And then, it was coming out of that. And then obviously with the whole stuff with my son, I knew something wasn't right. And I knew, we could argue it probably was anxiety and depression at the time with the train incident, but I knew it wasn't right. I knew this wasn't anxiety, and that my brain needed to calm the fuck down. So it all kind of ties in. And I'm a big believer that had we had sort of 15 years ago better knowledge and better diagnosis of ADHD, perhaps I would never have been in that situation. I don't blame anybody. It's more of a reflection. What if? But so that's kind of how shit happened.
Yeah. Do you look back at that train line incident and you're grateful for it? Because it was kind of like the start of like
Yeah.
getting yourself sorted.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that sometimes you have to completely demolish the house to rebuild a new one. And
Yeah.
certainly that rock bottom, and it really was. I did not want to be here at all. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of people that feel like that, and I, God, I totally sympathise with it. And yeah, you feel that you're going to be everyone else is going to be better without you. There's no other way out. There is you can't see a solution. You can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah, so yeah, it's but doing that and having that rock bottom certainly started to build the foundations, which is what I needed and what I don't think I ever had, was those
Yeah.
foundations to rebuild that structure and get to where I am now. So yeah.
Yeah, so we spoke, well, you spoke earlier about how
Yeah.
like men and women, girls and boys deal with it like differently. So from a woman's point of view, how does it differ from a male being diagnosed with it? What symptoms do you have that are different?
I well, I don't have the hyperactivity, as in, you know, you see young lads especially with ADHD, and the typical kind of, and this is not everybody, but the typical stereotype is bouncing off the walls, screaming all the time, not focusing on work at school. I was what primary school used to call me a gifted child. I was reading books by the ages kind of 4 or 5. I was reading full on books. I was reading to the nursery class. You know, I was really, really good with things, and still am with words and stuff. It's a lot of daydreaming. It is hyperactivity, but it's in here. It's not
Yeah.
outward. It's not physical. It's getting so overwhelmed with daily stuff that you just go, fuck this, and you just can't do any of it. Your to-do list stays there, and you're on the sofa going, fuck, I'll do it all tomorrow, you know, because it's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much. So yeah, they're very different. You certainly see a lot of entrepreneurs that are female that, you know, they've got ADHD because we do channel it differently. It's, you know, it's a lot of the ability to multitask. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's all negative. My ability to multitask is pretty fucking phenomenal. And I say that myself. Some of the things that I've done. But yet on other days, I'll sit here and go, I can't even decide whether I'm going to wash the clothes or go and have a shower. And the whole thing overwhelms me, so I do neither. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's certainly, the hyperactivity is definitely here rather than outwards, I think.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, was the main difference. And this, as you probably worked out, I don't shut up.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Now you did mention a word to me on the phone call we had about, you know, when you message somebody and they don't message straight back. What was that word called?
That's RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria. And yeah, that is something, and having spoken to men with ADHD, they do get it, but in a slightly different way. So it might be like work stuff or whatever. Women, and I can only speak from my own experience, I suppose, but and from talking to other people, rejection sensitive dysphoria is an extreme emotional reaction to perceived rejection of whatever kind, whether it's job rejection, whether it is, you know, constructive criticism. Even constructive criticism can be, you sort of sit there going, what do you really mean by that? You think I'm a pile of shit. You know, I'm going to lose my job, and it just spirals, you know. And with the whole texting back thing, that's the example I used. That if I drop a message to somebody and, you know, you see that they've read it, they've not answered you, most people go, all right, that person's busy, I'll catch up with them later. Or no. For somebody with ADHD, it's almost catastrophic. You go into the spiral of, they don't want to know me. They think I'm a knob. They just don't. They hate me. What have I done? And you're thinking back to, what have I done wrong to make them be like that? What can I do to make it better? It's all this internal catastrophic stuff, all for something completely normal. It's
Right. So how do you deal with that? Because I can imagine, like, for you that must be absolutely horrific. For the other person that's not messaged you straight back, it's a little bit like, well, I don't know what's going on here. Like, you know,
no
it's
idea.
yeah, like, I could see how it could cause a few issues, like not only for you but for that other person as well. So
Yeah.
how do you even start to deal with that? Because you've got to catch it quick before your brain goes off to I'm not good enough and all that.
You do. A lot of it is distracting yourself, giving yourself that big old to-do list that you really can't get through anyway. It's distracting yourself, it's putting yourself, you're taking that step back and going, right, some of the stuff that you and I have done before, where it's like, is that really true? And what's your evidence for that, really? You've got to get yourself out of that state first. And then, you've got to ask yourself these questions. And then, you've just got to kind of, I don't know, I suppose, really put yourself into a logical brain somehow and go, this is not how it is. And quite honestly, what I do a lot of the time, and I've started to do this a lot more recently, is be bloody honest with the people that I'm communicating with. It's a bit more difficult if it's work colleagues, because they'll be like, what the fuck? To friends, just, saying to them, look, is everything okay? You kind of know what I get like. I'm a little bit, and they'll go, yeah, I'm busy or whatever. I've been up to this, that, and the other. And do you know what, Em? It's never what I think it is. Or, it's just not. It's always that somebody, with people, we've got businesses, it's never that they don't want to talk to you or you've done something wrong. It's always that they've been driving, they've been cooking, they've been, they've been on a meeting, or they've been dealing with whatever it is. It's normal shit that they're dealing with. And we sometimes forget that other people are dealing with what we're dealing with. And I think one of the biggest things that stuck with me, again, from Paul, is not to expect yourself from other people, because you're always
big one
yourself out of a disappointment on that one. And that's certainly something with the RSD stuff that you have to bear in mind. Definitely.
Yeah, I could see that being quite problematic and annoying as hell, like for you to have to keep getting yourself out of that mindset and going, is it true? But I suppose that's a must, otherwise you'd just be absolutely frustrated.
You drive yourself
all
insane.
The time.
You put your own self-esteem through the floor, because you're constantly assuming that that's what it is. Now, don't get me wrong, I know we've spoken previously about my childhood and stuff. There was a lot of cruelty, neglect, rejection, all the stuff. So I suppose the default setting is always going to be that. But nonetheless, it really is sort of trying to understand that about yourself. It's a lot of self-reflection, and trying not to project your own self-reflection onto other people. And that has helped. I mean, God, it's not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say I've made a miracle. Recovery is not the word, but it's a miracle I don't do it anymore, because you can guarantee at least 2 or 3 times a week I'm going, oh, but what have I done? but it's just kind of trying to trying to be logical and trying to deal with it that way.
So you are medicated, but sometimes you don't take it. Is that right?
Yes. Because so I am medicated. I was initially put on methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, Zagotin, that sort of stuff. That didn't agree with me at all. It actually gave me the most mental clarity with its benefit, but I ended up with side effects that I felt so sick, really, really sick, that it was to the point that I couldn't do anything anyway because I was feeling so sick. So I ended up having that change, and you'll always end up on methylphenidate first, and then if it doesn't work, they'll give you the dexamphetamine, which is the Elvans, and a couple of other drugs, but brand names really. But for obvious reasons, especially to people with an addictive personality, they don't like giving you amphetamines.
Right, okay,
understand. But that's what I'm on now, which I do take. But there are times, and this is one of those times, you can probably tell because I'm just verbal diarrheaing, in that if I've got some work projects on, for example, that involve a lot of multitasking, which I have at the moment, I've got a lot going on. The medication will give me a clear head, and it will give me a focus. I can get into details. I don't make mistakes, but I can only do one thing at once, which is great sometimes. When you've got to multitask and you need your brain to be going bing, 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 the medication kills it. So that's the reason I'm not taking them right at this minute, because I need my brain to be all over the place at the moment, because I need to be juggling a lot of plates all at the same time. And with that medication, you just can't. It's a nice feeling of clarity, don't get me wrong, and it's got its time and its place, but when you're doing a lot of stuff, then for me, I mean, for other people it might be different, but for me it's just like, no, I need my brain to be in certain places. And there's stuff that the medication will get rid of. So like all this stuff, this spark, this energy that I have when the medication kicks in, I'm not like this at all. I'm very, you know, you can't put me
Calm and zen. You could
very,
live like a
very,
monk.
very, yeah. And people go, "You all
But then you
right?
lack creativity with it. So
You
yeah.
absolutely do. You get a lot of
Mm.
logic and a lot of problem solving, but yes, you lack that creativity. And the amount of people that have said to me, "Are you okay, Deb? You seem a bit flat today," because I haven't got my usual kind of buzz. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm just on my ADHD meds, and you know, I'm there sort of meditating in the corner. And
I love
you're
it.
right, Deb. I'm fine.
You're not swearing. Are you sure you're all right? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Oh,
So I wanted to get on because ADHD is like the buzzword at
it
the
is.
moment with
It
everybody,
is. Yeah.
and the waiting list for like to be seen. I
Mm.
mean, I was hearing it was 4 years. I did actually hear the other day it was now gone up to 10 years. I
Yeah.
don't know how true that is, but
It wouldn't
I mean,
surprise me. It would not
yeah,
surprise
I mean,
me.
it's horrendous.
Yeah.
Now, like with everything, so it's like when the mental health campaign came out, like people that felt just a bit fed up,
Yeah.
you know, automatically put themselves in the depression box. When the menopause blew up, you know,
Yeah.
every woman started to question themselves whether they're perimenopausal. So I get it.
Mhm.
But with ADHD as well, the same things happened
Yeah.
with that. That's quite a dangerous place to be, and that's probably why the waiting lists are so huge.
And it's also why a lot of people have picked up on that. And you've got some very, very dodgy doctors cashing in on it and doing these half-hour Zoom calls and prescribing dexamphetamine. And you're like, what the fuck? You cannot
So
prescribe
is
that.
it, has somebody paid private for that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, maybe it's
Right.
something you shouldn't talk about just in case. But no, there are. I suppose it's important to talk about because it's the difference between the two. So with that now gap in the market, I suppose if you're going to talk commercially, there's that space there for ADHD doctors to get people on a call, you know, like this, talk to them for half an hour and go, yep, you've got ADHD, pay me, you know, £120 a time and you can have these amphetamines. I'll prescribe them to you. And it's so dodgy because that's not the process. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, the diagnosis, all right, the doctor will obviously assess you, but they're talking to your family, they're talking to your friends, they're talking about what your childhood, how you behaved in childhood as well. That's the process. And it takes a long time. It's not half an
Yeah.
hour. But so yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a huge waiting list, and unfortunately, yeah, things are getting a little bit dodgy with it all because people are cashing in on this, as you said, the blow up of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, you know, I often think, you know, the world is extremely busy at the minute. I mean, you know, everything that is available at the touch of a button. We have that much information coming to our brains daily. A lot of people I speak to are overwhelmed.
Yeah,
That doesn't make them ADHD. That's
no,
life
it's
in
overwhelmed.
general.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
overwhelmed. So I think, you know, people, it's sad because I think when you start thinking, right, okay, I'm going to live under this label,
yeah.
it can be massively, yeah, it can hold you back and ruin your life basically. So
Yes, yeah. And
what
there is that
it's
stigma to it because the moment you say to somebody, "Oh, I've got ADHD," you get the eye roll, and oh, yeah, well, isn't everyone a bit ADHD? And oh God, that's all you hear these days. Everyone's got ADHD, and it's like, no, I really have.
yeah, you've been down
Genuinely
the
have.
proper process. I'm
Yeah,
hearing so many parents at the minute where they're like, I think my child's got ADHD, and you think, but have they, or are they just learning how to deal with life from you and you're a bit hectic
yeah,
and all over the place? But we're very quick to label kids in society. If one of them's naughty, there's something wrong with them.
yeah. Because it's
And it's so
easier.
wrong.
Let's be harsh here, and you know me, I can be pretty brutal. Sometimes it's easier to give your kid a label than admit what your failings are as a parent. Right now, that
Yeah,
doesn't mean I'm saying that ADHD parents. I mean, God, I am one. I've got a son with one. I'm not saying that that's, you know, they're bad parents. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I suppose what I mean is sometimes our lives are so hectic, we don't want to admit to ourselves that actually maybe we're not letting the kids have a blast around the field as much as we should do. Maybe we're not letting them do all the sports they need to do to get their energy out of them. You know, maybe we're not interacting with them like we should. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so actually, these kids are hyper. It's not they're hyperactive because they've got ADHD. They've got a lot of energy because they're not letting off steam, right? So of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
it's like anything. If you're not letting off steam, you're gonna start climbing the walls, aren't you? So it's and then it's must have ADHD. Some yes, a lot no.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's a weird time where that's concerned, and it could be very damaging as well for the kids growing up if they're labelled and they've not actually got it.
No, especially when that label comes with a stigma of you're an arsehole, and it does.
Yeah.
It really does, especially for boys, which is pretty sexist, but especially for boys. You say you've got an ADHD boy, they won't get invited to birthday parties. And I've had this with my son. They won't get invited to birthday parties. People won't play with them because it's assumed they're going to be naughty, or they're going to, what they get up to is going to rub off on other people's kids. And
so that's pretty sad, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, let's start talking about work, because you told me about was it a grant that is available?
Yes. Access to work.
Tell me about this, because I didn't know this. I don't think a lot of people know about this neither.
No, and people that do know about it think it's if you're employed. And I know your podcast will go out to a lot of people that are self-employed entrepreneurs and so on. So so there's access to work funding, which I cannot push enough, because it's really, really helped me and will help a lot of people. It's government funding. You don't have to pay it back. It's a grant, and you don't even have to be diagnosed. You can judge that however you want, but that's how it is. If you feel that you have some sort of difficulty, whether it's ADHD, whether it's dyslexia, whatever it is, you can apply for access to work. Let them know what's going on for you, what support you think you might need, and they'll basically pay you or a person or for equipment or whatever to help you. Now they'll do that if you're employed. They'll pay your employer, and the employer obviously buys the stuff in for you. But if you're self-employed, director, whatever it is you are, it's also available to us as well. And I recently was granted just over £45,000. Have a support person with me who does all the stuff that I can't get my head around. So it's things like diary management, because I double book myself all the time. So there's diary management, there's things like admin, all the stuff that the monotonous shit that somebody can't get their head around. It's not that you can't do it, it's that you can't get your head around doing it. And so the idea being is that, if you're essentially going to lose your clients or lose your job because you can't cope with this stuff, they'll get somebody in to help you. You get to choose who that is yourself. Which is great, because a lot of people think you get given somebody. No, you get the money to choose who you want. And that support is there. So I got the 45 grand for Diane to come on board and help, and she's just been, my business has rocketed since she came along. It's unreal, because I can get on with my creative shit. I can get on with doing what I do best, which is front facing stuff. It's creating things. It's all the stuff that our brains are good at. And then once all that's done and I've sold that, I give it to Diane to deal with, and she's like, she loves it because she's a logical brain. She's great. And she's just like, give me all the stuff. So I had that. I had some ADHD coaching as well. And I was also given funding for an app, but the app didn't work for me because it didn't sync with Google Calendar. And it was a case of having to put all your stuff into the app. And I was like, well, that's just another task that I just can't be doing with. That didn't work for me. So I said to them, look, I'd rather have coaching instead. And they gave me that money. The funding is, go on, just Google access to work, have a look at it and start a claim. There is a waiting time for it. I think it's about 3 months before at the moment, waiting list when you apply to when you get your first appointment, which a lot of people will go, oh, there's no point if it's that long. Well, the way I look at it is, in 3 months time, you're going to have bugger all anyway, right? You're going to have no help, you're still struggling. So apply for it now, and then in 3 months time, you're all right. So I love it. I can't advocate for it enough. Access to work.
That's brilliant. Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell everybody about your business, the Quality Assurance Network. What do you do?
Oh, okay. So Quality Assurance Network is, to make it sound really, really boring, it's essentially auditing, which you wouldn't think somebody with ADHD could do, but I love this stuff. So it's quality assurance within adult education and training. So my background is in the security industry. So I've been in that, and that's why we spoke about the male-orientated environment. I've been in the security industry for 27 years. Started getting into training security staff back in sort of 2008, 2009. A lot of failings in the industry, a lot of people doing dodgy stuff. So to cut a long story short, I ended up doing basically verifying quality assurance, that sort of thing. So if you imagine when you're at school or college or whatever, you do your coursework, the teacher would say to you, right, I think it's a pass, but it's got to be internally verified. I'm a verifier. That's what I do. I check that the teacher or the assessor has made the right decision and that nothing has gone wrong. They've not done any favoritism or anything like that. So that's kind of what I do. Personally, for me, it's in the security industry with qualifications, but I've got 3 other people on my team that work with other qualifications as well. So yeah, we've got a lot going on. I think we're quality assuring around 52 different qualifications in different industries. So health and social care is one of them. We've got construction, special education needs, loads of stuff going on. But I'm the one that deals with the security side of it. So yeah, that's basically what I do. Make sure that people that train people are doing it properly and not doing anything naughty. And if they do, then make them a sort of man.
So that is the male environment that you are in, mate.
Yeah.
How do you deal being surrounded by males, especially in the security industry, which is known to, and I hate to say it because it's not actually technically true, but known to have big egos?
Oh yeah, it is. There was a lot of dick swinging in my industry, a lot. Very different than what I used to deal with it when I used to work on doors. So I've done doors and events. I've obviously been operational in security for, as I said, 27 years. I still am. It's very different because when you are, I ended up with my own security company and I ran a lot of security teams. And as a woman, you've got to be a lot firmer because men, when they come into the security industry, are assumed to be good until they fuck it up. Women are assumed to be absolutely shit until they prove themselves. Very, very different. So to then kind of end up running my own companies and teams and things, I had to be really firm and I had to be harsh with customers and with the men that worked with me and for me. I hate that word for me, but you know what I mean. Thankfully, most of the ones, well, all the ones actually that I had in my teams were very respectful. And it's quite nice because they end up being quite protective of you, which is good, but you still have to be firm with them. From the quality assurance side of things, I'm essentially looking after their training centres, although I don't telling them off. My role is to look after them and protect them and make sure that they're not going to get struck off by the awarding organisations and the regulators. So that's a different environment. That's almost quite motherly.
Right.
Because if you're telling somebody how to run their business and telling them that they're doing it pretty shit, it's not received very well, especially when they're paying you money to do that. So I have to kind of mother them. And that's been received quite well. So my approach has had to change. So I have to flip between the two. So when I'm operational, I have to be a bit of an ass. When I'm quality assuring, I have to be a lot more nurturing. And that's quite, that's quite a balance.
You have to put
different hats on. Amy, they really are.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a conversation. You told me on the phone and when we were stomping around the Peak District about when you went, was it a gym that you went to with all the power lifters?
Yeah. Well, it was a party, actually. That it was with a load of bodybuilders. Because my husband's an ex-professional bodybuilder, so that's kind of the environment that they were in. And the insecurity was something that I was very surprised at. In that, so at the time, again, another sort of thing with ADHD, dopamine, all the stuff. Comfort eating, all that kind of thing. So I'd gone up to about 21 stone not so long ago. I was a big old girl, and I was feeling at the time really, really insecure. I thought, how can I walk into a room with all these extremely fit and healthy people? I feel like shit. I'm so self-conscious, and to the point that I said to my husband, if I get too bad, I'm going to have to go. And he was like, okay, I get it. He was really supportive of it. And I'd walked in the room and I must have been the most confident person there, despite my issues, because everybody was so insecure. You could see people checking each other out. yeah, bizarre situation. And bearing in mind, these people were fit. They were fit. They looked really good. I suppose you could top of their game. Perhaps some of them were winning competitions and all that sort of stuff. But actually, the comparison with each other, it was and I get it now. At the time, I thought it was bizarre, but now that I've kind of looked more into it, I get it. But yeah, the insecurity was absolutely insane. Just this comparison and I wouldn't say ego, because I know ego is part of insecurity, but there was no kind of what I thought was going to be this dick swinging kind of room. It was all a lot of insecurity and a lot of, worried about what they looked like compared to other people. And yeah, very, very strange. To me, it was very, very strange. Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah, very odd. So do you find that, because obviously, I mean, I know they're not all bodybuilders like insecurity, but they have to have an air of kind of authority. So do you find that in that world as well?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
There is a thing where if you've got a good team, you've got what we call a couple of monsters, a couple of talkers, and a couple of females. That's what that's kind of so bad and sexist and stuff. But that you kind of got to have that, because you can't have complete monsters everywhere, right? Because not everybody that you need to deal with insecurity is trying to beat you up. Some people are vomiting on their shoes. Some people are, most people vomit on their shoes, to be fair. It's probably 90% of the time you're dealing with people that are spewing, or they've got some sort of problem, or they've sliced their hand open, and or whatever. So you haven't got a huge amount of ego all the time, but you certainly do have that. But yes, there is still an awful lot of almost kind of I'm harder than you sort of thing, because that's still a stereotype. I mean, the industry's gone downhill a lot over the past kind of 20 years, I would say, more so over the past kind of 10, 15. So you do get door staff that are not the sort of people that they used to be, because the training has changed, the industry's changed. But nonetheless, when you've got people that have been doing it a long time, you do still get that, oh, he's a dickhead, that sort of stuff, because they're trying to put them down to make themselves look better. And that's a bit shit to see sometimes, but you quite honestly, you do still get it, definitely.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Yeah, you definitely see the older ones that are still like proper alpha male, and then the younger ones don't tend to be.
I tell you what's strange is, now that I think about it, actually, I'm thinking, does that happen with women? And I'm not here to say women are better than men, because that's not the case. You don't see it with women, and I think because there's not as many women in the industry, we've only got about 10-15% of the industry that's female. So maybe it's because there's nobody really to compare yourself to. I suppose everyone's on the sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, and we're a lot better, I think, at appreciating other women's qualities, and we're a bit more, I don't know what the word is. Somebody said to me the other day, you women always gang up on each other. Not on each other, sorry, you always gang up on us, you always gang up together.
I would say we're very much from evolution point of view. Like, when the men went out to go and fight the bears, we were left like in a group.
Yeah, looking after each other.
Looking after each other. So I suppose that's an evolution thing that we're still kind of hardwired to do.
But we don't get that. I mean, you do. If you've got one woman that's pretty shit at what she's doing, or she's too aggressive, or always causes a problem, then yes, you do get that. But that would be the same if it's a man. Because person, regardless of the gender, that person is a fucking liability. So you do get that. But you do see it less from a completely ego perspective. You see it a lot less in women than you do in men, definitely. I sound like I'm hating on men here, and I'm absolutely not. Men are wonderful. I love men, but
you're like me. You're like me in the fact that we love men. I actually think men have a bad time in our society.
Yes, they absolutely do. Toxic masculinity and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's an odd way
about being a man. There is nothing toxic. Men are
toxic about being a man or an alpha male, but they are pulled down for it. So I don't know whether, did you watch the Danny Dyer documentary?
I haven't yet. No, I want to. I'm going to. But I haven't had plans.
It's interesting. I mean, you can absolutely see what's gone wrong. I don't know how the hell they fix it. Because it is a society problem. But they said, so most of the male suicides are actually in construction, which is known as an alpha male.
Yes. Yeah.
But what about security? I was going to ask you about that, because that's predominantly an alpha male.
Yeah.
So they struggle.
I don't know the actual statistics on it, but what I do know is that, yeah, there is a lot of struggle. And I tell you, one of the biggest things that I've discovered over the years, and as I said, I've been in this a long time, is when something really shit happens, and it does in our industry, it does. I mean, you get your violence, you get your fights, you get all this stuff, but you also get things like God, some of the bloody horrible things I've seen. I've seen somebody slash themselves to bits with a bottle. People get run over outside a nightclub because they've run into the bloody road in front of a taxi. Shit like that. Things that have really, really gone off. People that have been, they've gone into something really, a big old brawl, and nobody else has gone in. Like, your team's supposed to go in with you, right? And nobody else has, and that person's got battered. Now, what happens? Men are supposed to, and I don't believe this is just a society thing. Men are supposed to walk out of it with their head held high, brush their hands off and crack on, right? Some of this shit is traumatizing. It really is. I mean, watching somebody get run over, watching somebody slash themselves to bits, it's fucking horrific. And they're supposed to just brush their hands off, get a pint and get over it. No. But that's a stereotype, and I suppose one of the most privileged things I've had is that, being female, you'll see these lads with their colleagues, their male colleagues, like, oh, it's all good, mate, did you see that hurt? And then they'll come to me and they'll go, fuck, Deb, that was fucking awful. Completely different. And I have the privilege of I suppose being that sounding post for them, where they can let it out, because when they talk to me or a female, whatever, there's no judgment of, I'm not expecting them to be, I'm not expecting them to do that, to say that. I appreciate vulnerability. Not that, God, maybe vulnerability is the wrong word, because shit, you see something like that, that's not you being weak or vulnerable, is it? That's you being a human.
Human. I was about to say human, yeah.
Being a human. I would worry about somebody that would see a kid run over and go, meh, there we are. Like, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
But we've got this whole thing where they're just supposed to, it's supposed to be hard and they're supposed to brush it all off. So what I certainly have seen, to answer your question, is that there's a lot of stuff that they hide, because they feel they have to, because they feel it's weak. If they feel anything, feelings are weak. Feelings are for women. That's one of the things that I've had a couple of lads actually say to me, oh, feelings are for women. You're like, shit, no, they're not, and then the people then that really struggle, they don't come back to work or whatever, you hear that they've had a really rough time and they've taken too many tablets one night or whatever. As I said, I don't know there's any sort of numbers on suicide rates in our industry, and it would be interesting to find that out, actually. And I think it would be difficult because security is quite often a part-time job. So you wouldn't really know whether it's that or the full-time job that's caused it. So it would be interesting to find out. But certainly, processing of emotions and stuff is hard, I think, for men.
Yeah. I definitely recommend watching the Danny Dyer documentary. I know it's blown up right now, and it's sometimes in some parts it's quite hard to watch, but I think it's really important that people watch it to understand where we've come from.
You mentioned it the other day, and it's definitely on my list to get a minute. Watch. I'll watch a segment.
Sit in Zen and watch Danny Dyer.
Definitely.
Right, well, I've got one more question for you, and you're prepared. Like, none of my other guests have been prepared for this, but I was kind to you and told you.
Good.
So, Deb, mate, tell me 3 good things about yourself.
Oh, okay. I am prepared, but I'm probably going to change it. I won't change the hair, because I love my hair. My hair is massively curly. It isn't at the minute because I haven't put enough stuff in it. My hair is massively curly, and it's a good point of my personality, because it can either be really big or it can be, depending on how I'm feeling. So I love that. I love the fact that I'm actually, despite my exterior, I'm really compassionate, and and I will help anybody that needs it, and I love that, and I don't see that as a vulnerability. And the third one, I think, is how unapologetically and intensively that I just love and appreciate people, which sounds so not security at all, doesn't it? I love people. But it you know, people will say, oh, you know, don't, if somebody's not going to give you their time, don't bother with them. And I'm like, no, do you know what? I get pleasure out of loving, helping, compassion. And so I don't give a shit what comes back to me, because that's not what I'm doing it for. You know, I'm gonna give that out there. So that's probably one of my greatest qualities, is that I will love intensely, regardless of what the fuck you do to me, unless you're an asshole. And then
I was about to say, make sure you have a cut-off point somewhere, mate.
Yeah, there comes a point when you're like, I don't know, you're being a knob.
Yeah. Oh, I love them 3 points. And yeah, I think it's so in neuroscience that's called the helper's high. So it's actually making you feel better by appreciating and helping other people. So that's amazing.
Okay, that's good.
So I know on our chat you said that we'll pop on links and things for people to find you, because I know you said you'd be interested in talking to people, that anybody with ADHD that wants to go down the funding road. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me, drop me a message on my website, which is the qualityassurancenetwork.co.uk. I'm on Facebook, Deb Barber. You can't miss me. The hair is, I'm doing this in my profile picture because I'm so feel free to drop me a message on there. Email debbie@thequalityassurancenetwork.co.uk. And actually, if you do go onto the website, onto the contact bit, you can also WhatsApp me as well. So there's a little WhatsApp that gives my business WhatsApp thing on my phone. So loads of ways to get in touch if you want to start talking ADHD or funding or anything security related. I mean, I'll chat about anything. Horses, dogs. Talking about dogs, I'll talk to you all day.
I love that. Well, thank you for being an amazing guest. It was always a pleasure to speak to you, Mike. So like I say, check Deb out on social media, and if you are looking for the funding in ADHD, she's definitely the person to speak to that can give you all the advice on that.
Do my best.
So my lovely, I will see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Later. Bye. Bye.